Does gear matter? The burning question in the guitar playing community. Now, I hear and see arguments about this topic all over the internet. Most people have their own opinions about it, whether it does, it doesn't, it sort of matters, but not exactly why you think it would. Whatever. I have my own personal view and thoughts about gear, which I'll obviously share in this video, but I'm also going to share some thoughts from my friends and some of you guys, my followers and subscribers. I don't think there's a right answer, but there's definitely an answer for each individual person, and hopefully you will uncover that after watching this video. Here's a quick little story that will lead me into my first point about gear. Every week when I head to band practice in the city, I debate whether I'm going to lug the gear I mainly use with me. Now, I have my old amp that I've had since high school at the studio space as my backup practice amp if I don't end up bringing this stuff. And I find that when I don't bring it, I sometimes get in the bad mindset of, well, this isn't my true tone, so my playing might just be a little off today. That isn't true. It's a dumb mindset to get into, and I've thankfully pulled myself out of that. Today, how I play is how I play, no matter the equipment. Now, I had been playing that one amp that's now my practice amp for at least 8 to 9 years with no issues. I enjoyed it a lot, but only recently, within this past year, I decided to invest and buy a newer and much more expensive amp, which I'll talk more about later on in the video. But my point here is I never complained and never didn't enjoy using that amp until I got one that was objectively better. Objectively or subjectively? How I feel now about that older amp is based on my experiences with better gear. But the reality is they both accomplish the same thing. I plug my guitar in and jam and write tunes with the band. That's it. It's not like we're playing a live show or playing in front of people. We're just practicing. We're getting songs together, getting parts together. And I really don't need all of this crazy gear for that. Now, do I have a preference out of both of these amps? Of course I do. But that only matters to me now since I've been playing for pretty much half my life. And this type of stuff starts to matter a little bit more than it used to. Which finally leads me into my first main point. Gear shouldn't matter in the beginning stages of playing an instrument or whatever else. Not to say that it should ever matter for you if you don't want to get into it, that's up to you. But it definitely shouldn't in the beginning. It's really easy to get caught up in that type of stuff when there's already enough you have to put your attention towards, like increasing your skills, learning your instrument, etc. It won't matter whether you're playing $10,000 worth of gear or 100. As long as your $100 guitar is in working condition, then to a beginner, it really shouldn't and doesn't matter. Now, would it matter to a professional guitarist who tours the world? Yeah, most likely, but even then, not necessarily. It just depends on their preferences and what they like. For the professionals, I think reliability is the most important thing over just having expensive gear for the hell of it. But if you're sitting in your bedroom practicing and learning your craft and writing songs for the first time, then you don't need great gear to get started. The most important thing is that, getting started, and over time, you can then start to worry about gear because that's just the process of becoming a musician. Now, I just had a conversation with my buddy Nick, who's a guitar player, a guitar tech, and a producer at Minor Street Recordings here in Philly about this topic, and he made a really good point.
Yeah, I think as a beginner, I think the most important piece of gear is your guitar, and this is not just a pitch as a guitar tech. Having, it makes it harder. I think the only important thing is your guitar and having your guitar be comfortable and maybe not even set up, but like being on the right piece of gear. Like, you wouldn't want a beginner playing on this, like, heavy acoustic guitar when their hands are small and they can't even, like, reach 3 frets or something, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, gotta be, in that sense, you don't want to be overwhelmed with distractions. But thinking back, there was definitely guitars that were bad that I'm like, oh, this probably held me back a little bit, or, you know, or it makes you a tougher, your hands tougher for it. But I think you just gotta have the right guitar if you're a beginner.
Now, Nick and I had a long conversation about this. Maybe I'll post other clips in later videos or my socials, but the main takeaway from this is as long as you have a guitar that is set up properly and is playable, that's all you really need to get started. I started with a Squire strap pack that came with an amp for Christmas. It was like $150 and it got the job done for where I was as a beginner musician. So funny enough, while making this video, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw an article saying this. Mike Rutherford has been playing a $140 guitar during Genesis reunion shows. So his guitar tech actually revealed this, and he said the Squire Bullet Stratocaster is his favorite at the moment, and he bought a bunch of other cheap guitars like this in the clearance section at a Guitar Center in Newcastle, England. They were only about 137 American dollars. And then he also adds, they're unbelievably good guitars for the money. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk about why someone would need great gear or who it would matter for the most. For me personally, I decided to invest in a much better amp. I've been playing guitar for a little over 13 to 14 years at this point, and it was time for my big boy amp. This was also around the same time when I started to take this guitar playing thing a little bit more seriously and becoming a session musician, starting this YouTube channel and other things like that. To me, this new gear would help me land certain gigs. If I was talking to a client that wanted me to play on one of their tracks and we were talking about the gear I had and I said, oh, I have a Line 6 Spider amp, and they knew about this amp, I could only imagine what the reaction or thoughts would be. Having professional gear, if wanting to take your career to a professional level, is important, I think. Now, your skills and how you play is much more important, and that's mainly the reason why you got the gig in the first place. But having gear to back that up even more can work in your favor. This even goes for someone who wants to start their own studio. When you first start out, you're not gonna have all this money to buy this expensive ass gear. But over time, if things start picking up, you could attract more clients with better gear and also even charge more. The more you would grow this studio business, you would invest in more gear. That goes for any business. You have to invest in it. So with that being said, there's tons of reasons why gear could matter. But you have to ask yourself, do I really need it? Or if I'm trying to take this professionally, will this further my professional career? Answering those questions may point you into the right direction. Now, I totally understand the love and want for new and better gear. I still today see something and I'm like, oh, yeah, I really need that. And in reality, I really don't. The grass is always greener, right? There will always be more and better gear that comes out, and it's just a rabbit hole. But finding that limitation and holding yourself back from getting gear you really don't need is, I think it's a good thing. Now, I really wanted to hear what your guys' opinions about this topic were, so I asked you guys on TikTok, does gear matter? And here are some of your responses. God damn it. TikTok is it's an interesting place. So someone said 90% the player and 10% gear, and then someone disagreed and said probably 40% player, 60% gear. If you have an awful setup, you're not going to sound so great. Being a good player does matter substantially. But I think he meant doesn't matter substantially, but I'm not sure if I agree with the 40%, 60% gear. I think I'm more on board with it's more of the player. We also have, the person playing it diss. You guys are going to give me a stroke reading some of these. But I think he means it's the person that plays matters more than the gear. Another one, absolutely. No, better gear won't make you play better, but chances are you'll sound better and want to practice more. This is a really good point. When I was younger, I remember someone telling me, if you get a guitar that's better than you, you're going to be more inspired to pick it up and play every day. And that's actually sort of true. If you're playing a beat up crappy guitar and you've been playing for years and you don't upgrade, I think upgrading can actually be beneficial. So in this sense, new gear can inspire you to keep practicing and get better with your instrument. Because personally, that happened to me and it's sort of true. Now, there were a lot of comments in this video, so I'm not gonna be able to cover all of them, so I'll just do a few more. To an extent, you could be a bad player with good gear and we'll hear it. If you're a good player with bad gear, we'll hear skill over quality of tone. I like that one. That one's pretty interesting. And to sort of wrap all these comments up, there was a lot of yes/no. It depends on your music style/taste. It only matters what makes you happy. There's a lot of maybes. This just shows that it's different for everyone. It honestly shouldn't matter to anyone else what you prefer. If you're just getting started and you have the money and want to get gear, do it. Who cares? If that's what you want, then cool. If you're someone who wants to focus on playing first and then gear later, that's also cool. It's all dependent on what you want and the situation that you are in. I personally think that gear matters to everyone at least a tiny bit. I don't think there's one guitar player out there that hasn't drooled over a piece of gear or wanted something new to enhance their sound or get better tone. But being able to play your instrument is definitely the most important thing though. And if you can't do that or you aren't there yet, then my recommendation is just to hold off on getting all this crazy gear. When you're able to play well and you gain more experience, gear will both matter and not matter at the same time because your playing is unique to to you, and you will sound like you on almost any type of gear. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments. I really enjoyed making this video and talking to Nick as well as you guys on TikTok. If you want to check out Nick's channel, I'll link that down below. He has a really cool video where he sets up a really cheap guitar and makes it sound way better. So I really recommend checking that video out. Now I could talk about this topic for hours and there's tons of different things that I could get into, but I didn't want to make a super long video. So maybe sometime in the future, I will make a part 2 to follow up with this video. As always, thanks for watching and supporting my channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in next week's video.